Welcome to the Healers Café, the number one show for medical practitioners and holistic healers to have heart to heart conversations about their day to day lives while sharing their expertise for improving your health and wellness. Welcome to the Healers Cafe, and I'm today with Greg Lawrence, and he's a transformational coach, and his work, pretty well, about half of his work is psychedelic integration coaching, and the other is standard. I'm not sure what standard transformational coaching is, but we're going to find out all those things. So welcome. You've got different certificates in different things, also NLP, and actually a certified psychedelic integration coach. So, well, welcome. And this sounds like an interesting subject for people who are willing to look a little bit outside of the box or are not getting results with standard coaching or methods that they're familiar with. And that's what this show is actually about. It's exposing people to real people that are helping other people and, spreading the message and giving options so that people don't feel that there's nothing more they can do. That's the goal. So, and that's my intention for today. So, welcome. And why don't we start with what got you into this type of work?
Oh, goodness. I'm one of those people who's doing something that helped me a lot.
Perfect.
So, 10 years ago, I had an unexpected situation in my life that pretty much turned my life upside down.
Mm.
And I was in kind of a crisis, and I realized during that crisis that I had a lot from my childhood that had never even been examined, which was kind of the problem. In my family of origin, we didn't talk about things. That was how we solved problems. So
Yes.
all of that stuff had built up to the point where I didn't know what it was, but something wasn't right. And I sought out the help of a coach and a therapist. At the
Mhm.
time, I smoked cigarettes and I wanted to quit. I told my coach I'm going to try to quit smoking. And he said, I heard that there's a study on psilocybin that shows that that helps quit smoking. Well, I'm going to
Mm.
back up a second and say back in my late teens to late 20s, I did quite a bit of psychedelics along with anything else I could do to alter my mental state so I wouldn't have to feel what I was feeling.
Mm.
And then
Mhm.
in my late 20s, I got mixed up in hard drugs and my life spiraled out of control. So I
Mhm.
left the physical environment I lived in, where I'd lived most of my life. I just cold turkey stopped all substances except for cannabis, which I abused for quite some time. And I led like a suburban life. I bought a house, I had a family, I started a business. And here I was almost 30 years later, and this guy's telling me that mushrooms will help me quit smoking.
Mhm.
I thought I know about mushrooms, and I went and I got some mushrooms and I took them. And I discovered the power of intention because this is what often happens to people. They say, well, I took them when I was younger. I was, having a good time and partying. And now it's like I'm dealing with all these things for my life. That's because before you were looking out and now you're looking in. And that night I saw a lot of the patterns in my life, what I wanted to be doing as opposed to what I was doing, what I didn't want to be doing, as opposed to what I wasn't doing. All of those things became clear. And I thought, now that I've seen all that, of course, everything's going to be different. And within a
Mm.
couple of weeks, everything was pretty much the same.
Right.
So rinse, repeat a couple of times. I couldn't figure out why I was seeing all of these things that made sense to me, having these epiphanies and insights, yet my life wasn't changing. And I started researching and found out that there was this thing I'd never heard of called psychedelic integration, taking those insights and doing something with them in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And I went and I found something called an integration circle. It's a safe space where people talk about their
Mhm.
experiences and build community and lend support to each other. And I started attending those a lot. And I learned, first of all, that what most people called integration didn't work for me.
Mhm.
I learned what did work for me. And after being around the integration circles for a long time, they said, you're here all the time. Why don't you take over one of these circles? You'll do it like every 2 weeks or something. And pretty soon I was leading integration circles 2 a month. And people would come to me for counseling because I was a facilitator and I seemed to know what I was talking about. And I thought I should probably know more of what I'm talking about. So I went and I got certified as a psychedelic integration coach and as a life coach. And I owned a small business at the time and I kept getting people coming to me for coaching. And I kept thinking, I have this business to run. I can't keep doing this coaching all the time. And it finally occurred to me that that could be what I did.
I
So
see.
I think of myself as someone who has a lot of modalities and a way of operating that would have been very helpful to me at the time that I was looking for help.
Mm,
And I've never loved something I do as much as I do coaching.
wow. Oh, it's a beautiful, like integrated story, right? It's
Yeah,
literally. I've got to share something funny with you, just and then we'll go back to you. But it's just
sure.
I have to say it because I've been very fascinated by sort of the integration of people's. So as a naturopath, right? I'm not one now. I'm not a practicing one, but I've still done it for like 30 years. You really get to meet people because you spend time with them. And most of the time, our suffering is either unconscious because we don't know the stories we believe, or we believe the stories that we tell ourselves and we don't understand the roots anyway, and we create most of our suffering. So I'm like, okay. And there's this guy, I'm sure you know about him, Dr. Gabor Mate,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he did an integration circle, and I've followed his work. I love him. He's a great person, and I'm in Vancouver, right? So it's easy to bump into him. And what was so funny is I thought, oh, he's giving a 3-day lecture. What an honor to I am signing up. I'm doing this right now. I had done psychedelics when I was quite young. I have a joke. I say I gave it up when I was 17. Um, so, but here I came to this thing and I'm there to listen. And I realized that it's a circle and there's, substances to, that are part of the beginning part of this integration. I'm like, wow, I didn't know this. And I was terrified to do it because I hadn't done it for so long, right? And anyway, but it's kind of funny. I walk in and it's actually to help addiction. And it's like, what's your addiction? And it's like, oh, I don't know of one. But it's like let's just be there, and join it. And anyway, it's so wonderful to see that type of work integrated at a whole other level. It really, really inspired me. So I've been interested ever since. So yeah, you're speaking to me.
Well, that's unlike any integration circle I was ever at because we actually didn't allow any substances in ours. So,
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, no, because I think it's with uh what's the plant medicines,
yeah.
so anyway, but it was very interesting. The integration part, right? Like it was just fabulous what can come out. So let's talk about what you do, but I just thought I'd share that with you.
Appreciate that.
So what is this? First of all, what is different than when you say integration, it's different than what most people mean. What could you clarify what you mean by that?
Yeah, I don't think so much that, well, I think my integration is probably different from what a lot of people do, but what my remark in the beginning was that a lot of the things people consider to be integration didn't work for me. A lot
Mhm.
of the things people suggested were activities that you might already be doing, like doing yoga or meditating or, grounding somehow in the earth. And if you're already doing those things before the experience and you're doing them afterwards, it may help some, but it's not doing anything to break the conditioning and patterns that you have in your life. And this is the
Right.
struggle that we have as humans is that we're spiritual beings, but we're placed in a body that has a brain. We have a nervous system that's very predictable and does certain things. And
Mhm.
one thing it does is it's on autopilot. And people often come to me because they're doing something they don't want to do, not doing something they want to do, feeling
Mhm.
something they don't want to feel, or not feeling something they want to feel. This is
Yep.
because our nervous system has automated things for us. When you step to the edge of a cliff and you look over, you have a natural reaction in your body that doesn't feel good that says, "Oh, get back from there." Well, everything that we don't like in our life, no matter how minor, has some small element of that to it. There is a discomfort to something that happens automatically. When we look over a cliff, we don't think, that's a cliff, so I'm going to be careful. We just, before our conscious mind has any chance to intervene, get this feeling in our body. Those things are happening at an unconscious level. So all day long, we walk around making predictions with our brains and sort of being disappointed because that prediction didn't come true. So we have little disappointments and unhappiness is happening all through the day. And unless you address those automatic reactions that you have at an unconscious level, when I don't like something, I don't feel good, then things may continue to be the same. That's what was happening to me. I was having the same reactions to things that I had before. So it felt like my life was the same. I was really the same inside. It didn't matter what
Right.
changed outside unless people stopped doing certain things, and I have no control over that. So you said something about transformation at the beginning. Transformation to me means personal transformation.
Mhm.
And that basically means, in some way, shape, or form, transforming my experience of life for the better.
Right.
So when you start down a path of personal or spiritual growth, you might say you have 97 problems. And after a while, you might just have 42 problems, but nothing outside of you has changed. It's just that less things feel like problems. Or
Right.
you might still have 97 problems, but that's not as big a problem for you as it was before.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So sometimes there's just an element of changing our relationship to problems. Sometimes it's changing our relationship to something so that it's not a problem or as much of a problem. And sometimes there's an element of changing our relationship to problems.
Okay, let's repeat that. Sometimes it's changing the perception that it's a problem. So we have a relationship where we believe that trigger is the problem.
Yes.
To the second one, or I'm not sure it's the right order, but the second one is the trigger is still there, but now you've modulated it in a way you go, oh, okay, that's just a trigger, but I'm okay. I'm fine. I've proven that it doesn't trigger me anymore. It's more like
Well,
a memory.
sometimes it may still trigger me. So the trigger, as you said, is actually the problem, not so much the thing. But generally, I think that the thing is the problem. My reaction to the thing is the problem.
Right.
Most of
Yes.
the time, that's what you can define as a problem. My
Yeah.
reaction to something could be a memory, could be a thing that's happening,
Yeah.
and whatever. It's my reaction to it. Unless I have to change something externally for there to no longer be a problem. Obviously, if I'm in danger, I need to do something else. But when it's
Yeah.
just a matter of I don't like that or I don't like the way I feel when I see or think about that, then it's my reaction. In the
Correct.
second instance, we still might have the trigger, but we've taken away what Buddhists would call the second arrow. That is me having a problem and then saying, oh my God, I have this problem. Basically making another problem out of the fact that I have a problem,
Correct. Yeah.
because I'm always going to have problems.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
doesn't always help to make another problem out of the fact that I do.
Yep. Absolutely. And I see that in health a lot, right? It's like you get, I mean, it goes much deeper as far as, but you get a diagnosis, which you happen to believe, but then you make the diagnosis almost a second layer of a problem to the problem. It's almost like that has its own speed and total, life of its own, right? But you still have the same symptoms and you're still the same otherwise. So I don't know if is that a little bit what you're meaning?
Yeah, you brought up in a very interesting point. Are you familiar with Ellen Langer?
I'm terrible with names unless I'm
All right,
putting it
so
in a total context. So I'm very
Ellen Langer is a psychology professor at Harvard. She's been
okay.
writing on the subject of mindfulness since
Oh
1970s.
yeah,
She's
okay, okay.
brilliant.
And now
So, in one study that she did, they looked at people who were pre-diabetic, who had a certain level of A1C. I think the number is like 5.6. At 5.6, you're considered pre-diabetic. At
okay,
5.7, you're considered diabetic. Now,
right,
people who were given a diagnosis of pre-diabetic with a level of 5.6 were far more likely to become diabetic than people who were diagnosed at a level of 5.5 because they weren't considered pre-diabetic. It was
right.
the label of being pre-diabetic that did something, whether that was what's the use, I'm already pre-diabetic, or
Yes,
just the stress of it causing people more physical problems. But yeah, being labeled with a diagnosis is often something that people can take and make into a worse problem internally, not intentionally, of course. That's what
no,
we've done as in Western culture as a society. We take these things very seriously.
right,
Even when it comes to cancer,
yes,
sometimes the person looking at the cell has to make it sometimes very obvious that that's a cancerous cell. Sometimes that's a judgment call. Someone has
correct,
to say, yeah, I think that's cancerous. And when they say that, the doctor gives you a diagnosis of being cancerous. Now you have cancer. but that was someone's judgment call.
Right. And it's far more complicated than just what you see on the slide. What's the state of the immune system of that person? Because if they have a very good immune system, they will get rid of cancerous cells. We all do. But if their immune system is, hampered in any way, then there's more problem with that cell. So even that is relative. But no, exactly. I totally agree with your point. Yeah.
I think it's Dr. Bruce Lipton that says that he will tell people, you're going to take this medication, and 30% of people have this reaction to it. However, when you dig down below, you look underneath that, 25% of those people aren't exercising, and 75% of them don't have this kind of diet. So there's a lot more nuance, even to those kind of subcategories that
Mhm.
we get,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
can help people feel better. The more information they have, sometimes the better they can feel, the better they can deal with it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Even when people get a diagnosis of saying this operation is successful 95% of the time, or this operation results in fatality 5% of the time. Those two are
Yeah.
the same things, but you react very differently to those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Words, this is what got me fascinated in neurolinguistic programming.
What would your life be like if you were pain-free? If you were one of the millions who suffer from chronic pain, the thought of just one day without it may seem impossible. This is often because conventional medicine tends to fall short in the treatment of pain, opting to prescribe pills or recommend surgery rather than getting to the root cause of the problem. But if you are suffering with emotional or physical pain, there is hope. Join the founder and CEO of Bowen College, Manon Bolliger, live online for your body-mind reboot. Learn how to listen to your symptoms and get to the root cause of your pain. Plus, be trained in basic Bowen therapy moves so that you can reboot your body for optimal health. You don't have to live in pain. You can heal. Stop the pain pill cycle by visiting www.yourbodymindreboot.com to learn more and to register.
Mhm.
Words have an effect on our psyche.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, it's very important in the interaction between two people, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. So what was the third one then? We got two of them. I think you said there was three ways. I called it trigger, but one was it thinking it's the problem. The other one is noticing, but being able to deal with it much more calmly.
Well, it's,
Well,
it's basically not making a problem out of the fact that I have a problem.
right. Yes.
You
Okay.
know,
Then
and,
we
and you can
covered
make that something very basic. That's actually something you can see in real time when someone feels anxious. You can note that you can feel anxious, but if you say, "Oh no, I feel anxious," now we have what we call meta problem. If I'm
it.
dealing with the problem of the fact that I'm anxious, then I'm never getting to the fact that I'm anxious.
Yeah.
So you just compound the problem by,
Mhm,
being
mhm,
alarmed that you have a problem, basically.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, it's true. Well, and I see it too when people um, ask, how is your day? I mean, in Canada, we say great, or how are you? Fine. So we don't give a lot of information, right? But I am Canadian, but I actually say what I'm feeling, right? Which puts people at a little bit in shock. But so I'll say how I feel. Oh, I've had a tiring day. Well, suddenly I'm focusing on the tiredness of the day. Whereas actually, if nobody asked me, it's almost like, well, whatever, I keep going, which can go both ways. But it's almost like I've dealt with it on some other level. I haven't compounded it. And that's what these circles, when people get together, I was diagnosed with MS. And people would get together and they would talk about all the issues. I mean, it's like, oh no, I am not participating in these support groups. Like, I'm going to find another way here, but it's just like you can't just sit in it. It's very detrimental. At least that's what I found. Not support. Support is really nice, but it's got to be the right support. not complaint support, you know?
Well, what you're paying attention to at any particular time directly impacts how you feel.
Hmm.
And I'm sorry, whatever else I was going to say just left my brain. So it'll come back eventually. It always does.
I've
Oh,
noticed
I know what I was going to say. To your point about being tired, and this is just a point of interest. Once again, this is Ellen Langer. She did a study with people who were um, doing some kind of physical exertion and
Mhm.
found that if people were, for instance, running for 30 minutes, that they got tired at about 20 minutes. They got tired about 2/3 of the way in.
Mhm.
If people were running for an hour, they got tired after about 45 minutes.
Yeah, interesting.
So
Yeah,
we have a mental point at which we think, oh, we've been doing this for a long time and now I'm going to get tired, but it depends on how long we're doing it for.
right. So is that like a sort of survival override? It's like I got to do it, so it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but people do strange things.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a highway where I live to go to a certain area. There's a small highway that you take. It's 2 lanes. And the speed limit there is 60 miles an hour, and it goes down a significant hill. And there are days when people might be in the left lane going 40 miles an hour. I'd like to at least go the speed limit.
Mhm.
And I get frustrated. And one day I noticed at that line of cars that was in front of me going down the hill, I could look and I could see, oh, there was a police car in front. So I can see the people are slowing down because there's a police car. And the pressure instantly went down inside of me. And then I
Mm,
realized, well, wait a minute. Nothing's different except for what I think is going on.
right, right.
Whenever I can, if that's happening to me, I try to imagine that there's a police car at the front of the line. And when I can manage to do that, sometimes the pressure goes down.
Yeah,
So these are all things that we create internally throughout the day.
correct. Yeah, yeah,
And those
yeah.
are sort of the kind of things that you deal with in personal transformation. You find the
Mhm.
things that you're creating yourself and how you can make things so that they help you operate in a way that feels better to you.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I was thinking your example there was like if people are, like driving like crazy and a passenger says in the car, "Oh my God, they're crazy, they're nuts, they're whatever." It's like, "Oh, they're going to the hospital because their wife is giving birth in the car." It's like it's just
Yeah.
another way of yeah. And do you think the basis of that is, I mean, people have said I'm an optimistic person. I can't help but make excuses for people to find the positive aspect, and I feel like my world is fantastic. Is that are we are we built this way, or can a person who tends to see the glass half empty transform with with help to start to see the glass three-quarters full, or half full, or maybe just the flip?
Well, both are true, actually. Yes,
Uh-huh.
we're built this way. And yes, we can use actually, like in some of the work I do, we use the natural tendencies of the nervous system to try to override or compensate for those things. So when you ask, are we built this way? Yes, because many years ago, if you think about where we are as a society just 100 years ago, we're vastly different.
Mhm.
200 years ago, even more, 500, 1,000 years, we were much, much different as a species then. Our brains, however, evolved much more slowly than we do as a civilization. Our brains are basically wired for 15,000 years ago when there were very little resources and a lot of competition. And we had, our brain needed to be fighting for every calorie. One of the reasons it's so hard to change is because your brain has gone through a lot of trouble to automate things that happen to you, and it thinks it would be a very bad idea for you to change. So
Mhm.
it doesn't want you to be less annoyed at something someone says any more than it wants you to be less careful when you're at the end of a cliff and when you're at the edge of a cliff. That's how it sees things. So I go here, I find berries. I need to have a good feeling about this place because this is where I'm going to find food to survive. So I need to remember it and I need to feel good about it. Then I go back and there's a bear there. Well, now I need to have a bad feeling about this place. So I stay away so that I survive.
Mhm.
Our brains are largely built to help us avoid dangers of everyday life. And the kind of dangers our brain was wired for don't exist in most parts of the world, certainly not in Western culture. So our brains are finding things to look out for. It's doing the thing it's always done, but it's doing that when I'm driving down the highway on the way to a dentist appointment, not when I'm looking for berries before the end of winter. We are
Mm,
wired that way, but there are things that we can do to
mm,
make this experience more pleasurable by having less unpleasant experiences.
Makes sense. Yeah. So maybe our time is coming. Not It's not yet finished, but close. Maybe is there a story of something of someone that you've really helped a lot that has, without names, obviously, but something so people know what type of things, before and after are we is possible.
Well, I'll give you an example. And this is a pretty typical example of someone who had kind of crippling social anxiety.
Mhm.
This was a young man who was very outgoing and very fit. And he had trouble walking into a room with more than 5 people. If that happened, there was a good chance he would panic.
Mm,
He was also a competitive surfer, which at first seemed
mm,
counterintuitive to me. And he said, no, when you're out there, you're all by yourself. It's you and the ocean and the board, and there's people over there, but you don't have to interact with them. Well, at one point, we discovered that the feeling he had when he opened the door and saw 5 people inside, and the feeling he had when he was at the top of a big wave and was about to take off, were biologically very similar in nature. It was the context. But there are some tools that you can use within NLP, HNLP, and hypnosis that when you find something like that, you can help someone sort of tap into that feeling in a different way. When you see a young child, if they get smacked from behind, they're going to turn around and look, because if their mother looks angry, they're probably going to cry. And if their mother's laughing, they're playing and they're probably going to laugh. It was the same experience, but the context is different.
right.
So you can
Right.
help people contextually reframe things in their minds. Um, you can help people to discover in many instances that the words they're using with themselves and others are leading them to think in a certain way. There are
Mhm.
certain ways that we think about things within NLP. We know that we see different pictures and hear different things and have different memories, and all of those things influence the way that we feel.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I'm like you. I'm pretty good. My wife says I'm very good at mood. I have the internal life that I've been looking for about 10 years now, because most of the time throughout the day, I feel pretty good. I'm the way that I want to be. I get
Mhm.
knocked off center just like everyone else, and I'll spin out for a while and I get upset, but I
Mhm.
know how to bring myself back.
Mhm. Yeah.
So there are tools you can use to help someone be more present so that they're not so much in their mind. You can
Mhm.
help people look at what is happening inside of them. And once again, changing that feeling of panic to one of anticipation is also a matter of changing your relationship to the reaction that you're having. Once again, it's a big
Right.
part of what you do in transformational coaching.
And to get people more present, what do you find is there, I mean, there's several ways, but what do you find that you like?
Well, I'll go back to two sources. I'll go back once
Mhm.
again to Ellen Langer.
Mhm. That's okay.
She's been writing about mindfulness since the 1970s. And she says, I agree with her. Mindfulness has been overcomplicated and is highly underrated. And mindfulness is the process of noticing things,
Right.
actively noticing novelty. So I can look around right now, and I've had, I don't know, like 6 pieces of art here on my wall. And there are parts of those pieces of art that I have never noticed. And if I take the time to notice those right now, I'm not on autopilot. I am
Right.
automatically, so there are 2 parts of the brain. One is the default mode network that a lot of people know about. That's the area you're in when you're really anxious or chattery or critical. That's the part that's on when you're on autopilot. And
Mhm.
if you're paying attention, as I just was, there's the attention positive network. Those two things turn off and on. So if I'm paying attention, it's very hard to be on autopilot. And if on autopilot, it's hard to pay attention. So
Mhm. Mhm.
actively noticing something around you that you hadn't noticed before actually brings you to the present. And I'll
Mhm.
give you another example. There are 2 researchers named Siegel and Farb who, in the early 2000s, met and discovered that they had a mutual interest in proving scientifically that mindfulness helped people tolerate stress better. Now, there
Mhm.
was a ton of anecdotal evidence to that effect. Obviously, it's been around for decades now, but it hadn't been proven scientifically. So they got together, they put a bunch of people through MRIs and saw how they handled certain situations and baselined their stress levels. And then they broke them in two groups. And one, they had trained in a kind of a mindfulness meditation, an 8-week course. The others, they said, you'll take this course later. When they were done with the course, they tested them all again. And sure enough, the people who knew how to practice mindfulness now handled stress better. So they said, I can't wait to put these people in MRIs to see how they've quieted down the default network and gotten rid of all those thoughts that were making them anxious. When they put them in the MRIs, there was no difference. Their MRIs looked the same, and they thought something's not right. We're missing something. They spent nearly a year reevaluating their data and finally discovered something they'd missed. And that is, in the mindfulness group, there was a part of the brain that was activated when they were in stressful situations called the sensory motor cortex. That's simply the part of your brain that becomes aware of what's happening in your body. So if you want to be present at any time, you can simply notice what's around you and notice that you have a body. And you don't need to do body scans or kinds of breathing or anything. All you can do is notice that I can feel my butt on the seat. I can feel the temperature of the air. I might notice that's a little different on one part of my body than the other. I can notice that I'm hearing something besides myself talking right now. And as soon as I do all that, I'm more in my body. I'm more present. So being present, being mindful is a process that's sort of like breathing correctly or, having racing thoughts. It's something that your brain doesn't like you to do. It likes you to go off into the future or past. So there's a constant process of bringing yourself back to the present that can be very helpful, because when you do that, you're also strengthening that neural pathway of being present just by exercising it over and over and over again.
Great. Well, this has been a very interesting discussion. And I think, people who don't know about this type of integration, I think we've really discussed it quite thoroughly. Thank you very much for sharing your insights and expertise. And any last, how do people get hold of you?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. If people want to find me, I'm Greg Lawrence on Facebook, but you can always go to greglawrencecoach.com. That's my website. That'll tell you how to find me at various places.
Great. Thank you. Just a couple thoughts that have come more to do with people who do body work, or what I teach, Bowen therapy, which is also body work, and it's really bringing consciousness to your body. It really helps in this whole mental process, because when people come, often there's a huge disconnection. They have pain, but it's almost like happening to their body. They're not in their body in the same way as when a person is at the point of releasing that pain or allowing it to disappear, or whatever their process is. But when you really connect to your body, and as this man also mentioned, the breath is another way of doing this, but just noticing that there's a head on top of a body is a big step forward. So I just wanted to mention that. And that's like a natural side effect of focusing a bit on body work, which, we do, but we do it more mechanically. We don't do it from a conscious perspective very typically. All right. Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café. If you haven't already done so, please like, comment, and subscribe with notifications on, as I post a new podcast every Wednesday with tons of useful information and tips for natural healing that you won't want to miss.